What does it take to drum for Avenged Sevenfold, one of the biggest metal bands of all time? After studying hundreds of hours of footage, I found 7 secrets that every drummer should know if they want to get on the same level to be Avenged Sevenfold's drummer. I think there are a single-digit number of other drummers who have actually pulled off what the Rev did here. Now, the Rev played an entire album in one single take.
The Rev, to his credit, he was like, well, I know all these songs. I'm just going to play them one time. He played like 6 songs and we're like, I mean, we have no comments. So we just kept going. Then by the end of it, he's like, I'm going to do this whole record in one take. It just shows the ability of this 18-year-old kid that could just slay.
The Rev future-proofed his skills. But what the heck does that actually mean? Well, let me illustrate this point by asking you a question. If I told one person to build me a house in 24 hours and another person to build me a house in 1 year, which house do you think would be better? Well, for those of you watching at home sitting on the toilet, yeah, I'm calling you out. I know that you're watching this on the toilet. You probably picked the house that took a year to build. But why? Well, person number 1 just had to start taking action. They only had 24 hours, so they would just get whatever they could put their hands on and put something together, probably as flimsy as possible. But person number 2 would have the opportunity to design the house, make it look awesome, and be the best functional and best looking house possible. The problem with most of us drummers is that we approach our drumming like person number 1 approached building a house, but we have the expectation that it will look like the house that took a year to build. But the Rev knew that to play an entire album in one take, he had to prepare so much more than what most people would even think is possible or be willing to do. For example, the Rev talked about working on a single drum part for months at a time. Now, we're talking about months to nail a 30-second part in a song. And that's the powerful mindset shift that the Rev had that made him so much more elevated than other drummers. It's not the fact that things came easier to him, it's the surprising fact that he was so much more dedicated than a majority of other drummers. Now, I'm gonna rank each one of these strategies so you know exactly what to expect when implementing them for yourself. I'm gonna rank future-proofing your skills as frustratingly difficult because as a musician, it's hard to spend a lot of time being frustrated on a single thing. But I promise you, the harder you push at it, the more benefit there will be on the other side of it. And no one understood this like the Rev, because coming up in this video, we will talk about his strategy of how he went from homeless to being one of the biggest metal drummers of all time. But first, let's break down the most important key that any drummer needs to master to play Avenged Sevenfold songs. Since Avenged Sevenfold is a metal band, it's an obvious statement that you have to be good at double kick to be able to play with them. But there's one specific thing that both the Rev and Brooks do that make the double kick parts really stand out from a lot of other bands. And it's the fact that they have control over their gear. You see, a lot of their double kick parts are very spread out and come in quick, chaotic bursts, which if you didn't know is way harder than just playing one double kick pattern for a long period of time. But yet they are able to play these kick bursts insanely cleanly. So how can you have better control over your double kick bursts so that your metaphorical drumming car doesn't fly off the road? Here's a 2-step process you can follow to really dial in your double kick bursts, just like the Rev and Brooks. Step 1 is to work on the smallest increments of burst patterns you can and build from there. So we're gonna start with 2, then build up to 3, then build up to 4. And I've brought in one of the best double kick drummers in the entire world, Chris Turner, to demonstrate this for you. Now, working on that should take plenty of time, but once you've mastered that, you can move on to step 2, building in bursts when you're already playing a double kick 16th note pattern. Now, I would rank this gear control as kinda hard because you can start off at a simple place and slowly build it until it gets pretty insane. And by the way, if you want note-for-note transcriptions of some of the most popular Avenged Sevenfold songs, plus a clear path of how to improve your drumming skill easily, well, you can get instant access to those through my online drum school, DBO Academy. Click the link in the description to get started completely for free. Now, having good control of your feet is a really important piece of the puzzle to create Avenged Sevenfold's drum parts. But what we're talking about next is arguably more important and is one of the key reasons that the drum parts in Avenged Sevenfold songs are so memorable. Now let's specifically talk about the Rev for a second, because he is widely known as one of the greatest metal drummers to ever live, and his drumming alone has inspired an entire generation of musicians. But what was it about him that changed the music world forever? Well, how about the time that he mixed Lil Jon?
We were like listening to Lil Jon, and he would punish people with these crazy subs.
Terminator 2.
Oh yeah, that's T2, baby.
And Latin beats.
It goes kind of to a little Latin thing.
All together to create one of Avenged Sevenfold's biggest songs. Well, it sounds pretty impossible to me, but this is exactly what he did to write the song Almost Easy.
Great song by James the Rev Sullivan called Almost Easy.
Yeah, this was kind of like our guinea pig song for producing an album ourselves at 24 years old or something.
You see, one of the biggest ways that drummers get popular is not from the exact notes that they play, but it's their overall unique drumming style. And the Rev knew that to develop his style the most, he had to combine all of his inspirations together, even if they were from unlikely places. I call this inspiration hacking, but be careful because this can be a really dangerous strategy to use. The wrong way to do it is to copy what someone else did note for note. Instead, what you want to do is zoom out and see what type of vibe is being achieved by each influence. So if you are in a creative rut right now, we can learn from the Rev and use this creativity boosting framework. Step 1 is to pick 3 unique beats, genres, or artists that you like. Step 2 is try to describe each influence with a single word descriptor that you can draw from. And step 3 is to try to create a beat or a song combining all 3 of these things together. And if you want another tangible example of this, we can take a look at what Brooks did when he wanted to combine Latin and metal together and came up with a groove like this. The best musicians are masters of internalizing a bunch of different inspirations and putting them together in their own voice. So I'd rank inspiration hacking as kind of hard. Now, the Rev and Brooks have both done one thing that have made so many of Avenged Sevenfold's songs so iconic. And if you follow this one strategy, chances are it will separate you from a lot of other drummers. Check out these clips to see if you can point it out for yourself. What the Rev and Brooks are doing here is called the pendulum method. Just like a pendulum moves back and forth, Avenged Sevenfold's parts move from very simple to highly complex. But the one thing about pendulums is that they always show a balance. If the drum parts were always too complex, it would be very hard to grasp to the average listener, and the songs wouldn't be as widely appealing as they are. But if the drum parts were way too simple, then a lot of the songs would be way too boring. So let's go over a 3-step framework so you can implement the pendulum method for yourself. Step 1 is to start off with any type of basic groove. Step 2 is add in rudiments within the groove or within the fill to add a unique spice within the middle of the groove or to build a new groove out of it. finally, step 3 is to add in polyrhythms into your drumming. You can start off with simple ones like 4 against 3 or 3 against 4, but it can give you that extra little gear to make your beats more exciting. Now, I'm gonna rank the pendulum method as frustratingly difficult. Now, Avenged Sevenfold's current drummer, Brooks Wackerman, has a secret, and it might not be what you expect. Brooks' biggest secret weapon is the fact that he's boring. And there are actually 3 main keys that make him being boring his actual superpower. Let me explain. The first thing he does is play boring patterns like this. Now, all Brooks is doing here is playing an incredibly boring rudiment called a double paradiddle. But Brooks has mastered it so much that he knows how to move this simple pattern around the kit and make it sound really awesome. And because he's taken the time to really master these boring patterns, he's coming up with parts that most other drummers don't come up with. The second boring thing he does is, honestly, Brooks can play insane patterns on the kit so effortlessly that he actually can look bored sometimes. But what you might not realize is that if other drummers attempted to play what Brooks was playing, it would take maximum effort for them. And finally, the way that Brooks practices is just boring. Brooks practices things slowly like this.
Are you stifling a yawn?
No, sir.
And then once he's mastered playing it slow, he plays all permutations of that pattern. The dominant hand leading, the weak hand leading, and alternating between hands, like this. Working really hard on boring things is not sexy, but these are the skill sets that allow you to play all of the sexy, complex stuff. It's counterintuitive, but it works. I've got to rank being boring as frustratingly difficult because it requires an insane amount of patience. So what really makes Avenged Sevenfold's drumming so impossible? Well, there is one key thing that both the Rev and Brooks Wackerman have in common. And the crazy thing is, most musicians watching this video right now already know what it is, but you'll still ignore it. Both the Rev and Brooks make the easy impossible. But what does that actually mean? It means they hyper-focused on the one area of drumming that matters the most, the basics. You might be thinking, Gabe, the Rev and Brooks don't play basic patterns at all. They play insane things like this. Or like this. Now, yes, that's all pretty insane, but let's break down what they are actually playing. They're playing 2 of the most simple patterns that exist, which is a single stroke roll and a hurta. And chances are, whether you play drums or not, you can play both of these patterns right now watching this video. So why do these simple patterns make the Rev and Brooks so much different than everyone else? These guys practice these stupidly simple patterns for days, weeks, months, years, by themselves in their room with no one watching, probably bored out of their mind. But that's what it takes to reach the level of these 2 drummers. And we can follow in their footsteps with something that I call the Basics Mastery Checklist. Step 1 is to pick a very simple pattern and practice it very slowly until you could play it for 5 minutes straight with 0 mistakes. Step 2 is then repeat that same process, but with your weak hand leading that same pattern. Once you've mastered that, then you can start moving your dominant hand around the kit, applying that same pattern so you can learn to play it in a multitude of different ways. Then you guessed it, repeat that same process, but with your weak hand moving the pattern around the kit. And then finally, if applicable, apply this same pattern to your feet for ultimate control over the pattern and over your own body. I have been drumming for 20 years, and if there's one thing that I've noticed about what separates the best players from the worst players, is that the best musicians are the best at the basics. This requires a lot of patience, but the most patient musicians are the best musicians. So I'm gonna rank making the easy impossible as frustratingly difficult. Now, one thing that we have to understand about the Rev is that he was an overnight success. But to really understand what that actually means, we need to rewind quite a bit. We need to go back all the way to when Jimmy was 13. And when we can go this far back, you'll start to get an understanding of why his music made an impact on millions of people. Because it all started with just a kid who loved drumming so much and one day wanted to be in a band. And when you're that good at drumming at just 13, you would think the road would be really easy, right? Well, actually things were very difficult for the Rev growing up.
I was always, in and out of homes, living in my car, living in a laundromat at work.
Even after starting Avenged Sevenfold, it would take years and years before the band would make a single dollar.
We had like $1 a day food budget, which was actually putting us in debt.
You see, the Rev had to push through being homeless, pushing through being in a band that was struggling for a long time, and even recording an entire album almost immediately after breaking his hand. But the thing is, to be an overnight success, all it takes is just not stopping. Overnight successes are built over a decade. Jimmy started this journey at 13 years old and pushed through a number of hurdles for over 10 years. So all those people who were telling him he would never make it, they were right for over a decade until the day that those people were so wrong. If you are trying to be an incredible drummer or be in a big band, know that the graph looks like this. This is my YouTube graph. You can see years there where there's literally almost nothing. And then after like 5 years is when you even start to get a moderate amount of anything. And then if you stick it past even that, that is when the overnight success happens. This is the graph to expect to become an overnight success. You've got years and years of insanely hard work, and then eventually something works to be able to reap the rewards of all of those insanely hard years. So what's a simple framework to become an overnight success? Step number 1, don't stop and surround yourself with people who also don't want to stop. Step 2, put in the actual work. Do the practice that you know you should be doing. Write the songs that you know you should be writing. Play the shows, make the videos, whatever that thing is, actually do it. Step 3 is learn from the work that you do and implement the learnings and the changes as fast as you possibly can. And then step number 4 is repeat this cycle over and over again. But then you know what happens after years and years of dedicated work and something actually works, then everyone else around you likes to say, oh yeah, well, that was just all luck. But you know what improves luck? Hard work. And then learning from your hard work, and then implementing those learnings into more of the work that you're doing. So what sounds more reasonable to you? The fact that the Rev got really lucky and was an overnight success, or the fact that he worked at his craft harder than most other musicians? He learned how to be the best musician he could be. He learned how to play the best shows. He learned how to write the best songs. He learned how to market his band the best. And he learned how to make relationships with other bands that were bigger than him. All of those things put together is what makes luck. Or you can just say that everyone else got lucky to justify you staying in the exact same place that you are now for the rest of your life. Choice is totally yours. Now, I would rank overnight success as impossible because there are so few people that are willing to put in years upon years upon years of work without seeing any returns. But not nearly as difficult as what one of the best metal drummers in the entire world had to do to land the biggest gig in the entire world. I'm talking about how Eloy Casagrande landed the gig with Slipknot. If you want to learn the secrets and tools that he used to be one of the best metal drummers in one of the best metal bands, well, then click right here to check it out.